Today we're going to talk about how to use stories in your marketing to sell more stuff, but not how you think. If you're anything like me and you don't want to talk about yourself or whatever, you don't have to tell stories about yourself at all. They just need to be compelling stories. Now, I'll give you a lot of examples in a minute and show you how to do it. But first, why would you have to tell a story at all? Why not just be like, here's how cool the product is, look at all the features and stuff. And the short answer is a bunch of scientists figured out that most communication between people is story-based. If you think about it, that makes sense. You come home and you're like, how was your day? And well, here's what happened. That you're just exchanging stories with one another. The second thing, this was Harvard, I think, figured this one out, learned that when stories are told properly, it creates this emotional connection to the brand that's telling the story, and that can drive sales and profits up by 376%. And it gets better because it can even save people's lives, which is dramatic sounding, but this is a real thing. So Carnegie Mellon teamed up with Save the Children, charitable organization, and they were trying to raise money for children affected by food shortages. They had two different brochures that they would hand out. Brochure number one talked about the millions of people that were affected, that were just starving, all of these statistics, and it's just horrifying, really compelling. Man, I gotta help these people. The second one told the story of one little girl. She was 7 years old. Her name was Rokia, and the story just talked about how hard it was for her to find food every day and basically to survive just to get the essentials and the basics. And then it went on to say that literally just $5 could help this one person. It could change their life significantly. And when they got all the results of the big experiment back and everything, they found out that the average donation for the one with all the statistics, which is super compelling because it's millions of people, it's really bad. The one with all those statistics got, on average, $1.43 per donation, whereas the one that just told the story got $2.38 on average per donation. And dude, it's a 66% more money from one story about one person. Why? Well, there are a couple reasons. Number one, they felt something. You couldn't read about this 7-year-old girl and not feel the strong emotion about it and just want to help this one individual. So stories evoke emotion and they work. The second thing is that according to a study that was done by Stanford, people remember stories 22 times more than facts and stuff. And the reason why is our brains are wired to remember and respond to stories. It's the oldest form of communication between humans. So obviously it's one of those things that's been working since the time of cavemen and women, cave people or whatever, so stories are cool. Now what's really interesting is that stories have a profound effect on how much someone is willing to pay for the exact same thing. The story can actually make the thing more valuable. And this is wild. So there's this company called Origin Hill/Holiday. Google it. It's a cool study. Anyway, they did all these studies to see what happened when you just took thing A, normal version, and then glued a story onto it. And they found that the stories made people pay more money, which is really cool because they weren't particularly emotionally compelling stories. So here's an example of one of them. They got a bottle of wine and they stuck it on the little thingy there, and then they talk about the tasting notes and they did the usual stuff that you say about wine and everything, and that was version A. And then that was the one kind of stuff that's always worked. So then they took the same bottle of wine, and instead of talking about the tasting notes and yada, they put a story next to the bottle, and the story was about the winemaker and how the wine was made and all of that kind of stuff, and people paid more money for the same wine that had the story. And they did the same thing with art. They took artwork and they would display it and here's the art. And then the other version was, here's the picture, and then here's a little blurb about the artist. Not any, crazy, compelling or emotional thing or whatever. Here's who the artist is. And that kind of all. And just having a human to associate with the art made people pay 11% more for the same painting. And it gets even weirder. So I don't know why they chose this particular experiment, but they tested the same thing with selling spoons. on eBay, because who wouldn't want to go buy spoons on eBay? I don't know, ask them. And this is really where it gets weird. They tested, here's a spoon, knock yourself out. And then they tested exact same spoon with a fictitious story. And they weren't like lying or anything. It was obviously just a story that just kind of tied back to the spoon, but not really. And same thing happened. The one with the story brought 64% more for the exact same spoon. And that's really insane, because the story didn't really have a lot to do with anything, like here's how the spoon was made or whatever. It was fiction, and it wasn't presented as fact. So to be clear, they weren't lying to people or anything. They were just telling a cool story by this spoon, and it worked. And on top of that, it also increases conversion rates. So there's 3 studies that were done on this. 2 companies, one called LeapMesh and the other one called Business Dasher. I think they both released reports concluding that, all right, stories, if you do them right, increase your conversion by 30%. But the most interesting one was done by Arma and Elma, which I think is a marketing firm. But this was really cool. So they tested this thing where they were using stories in like e-commerce product descriptions, and like description A would be like, okay, this shirt is made from organic cotton and it's really cool and hooray. And then the other one, same shirt, same organic cotton, but it would go on to tell the story of the farm that grows the cotton and how they use sustainable practices and what they're doing and their farming and everything, and why the founder chose that particular farm. That story, 30% conversion on just random stuff like t-shirts. So the point of all of that is stories, obviously, they don't change the product. They change the relationship in the mind of the customer to that product, and they cause the customer, the prospect, to be willing to pay more money and pay more frequently. And here's where it gets even better. So stories don't just create one-time buyers. They create buyers that buy more often. So let's step outside of the usual marketing world for a minute and go into the nonprofit world. Nonprofits, a lot of times you donate and then they want you to donate again the next year and then again the next year and all of that. And they make a big deal about retention within their donor base. And this company called Higo, H-I-G-O, Creative, found that nonprofits, when they use storytelling in their marketing, and specifically when they include stories about individuals that have been helped by the donors' activities, the donors tend to stay 70% longer, meaning they keep donating 70% more than if they didn't hear the story. And the reason is because it feels like you're having a personal connection with whoever it is that you're helping. So we know that stories work, and this is probably not shocking information to you. What is a big relief is that obviously it doesn't have to be about us. Most of the examples I gave you were companies telling stories of other people and other stuff that weren't them at all. So for introverted people that don't like to tell stories about themselves, that's a massive relief. But now the question becomes, how do you do it? And the easy answer is, well, you use AI. But there's a really serious problem, because according to, I believe it's the same company, Higo Creative, 62% of consumers are less likely to trust the content, aka the story, if they think it's all AI generated. So the answer is not just, okay, go get AI to write you stories, because if it comes across and it's obviously written by AI, it's going to cause a negative effect that backfires on you, which is the last thing that you want to have happen. All these studies show that people like it when marketers and brands use stories instead of boring facts and stuff. So I think one of the studies showed that 92% of consumers prefer story-based marketing. So that's awesome. And now we can make a ton of stories, but if they think it's AI, then 64% decrease in trust immediately. So we can mass produce this stuff. They want us to mass produce it, but if it feels mass produced, then it's bad. So what do you do? Well, it's pretty simple. You use AI as a partner and not a replacement. I made this with the help of AI. Obviously, this is me talking to you, and I'm clearly not reading an AI-generated script or anything, because A, I can't do the script thing. Obviously would be reading off of the script and everyone would be able to tell, and it's awful. So I just have to go by an outline. But the way I used AI to create this for you is, number one, I used it for research. So I was like, instead of spending 7 million years searching up articles about stories and stuff, I just used a tool called abacus.ai. I like that one for deep research. And I found all this information and all these case studies about stories and stuff. And there's like 1 billion pages of it. I'm like, okay, that's a lot. I'm going to need some help sifting through all of this. So then I just copied and pasted all that research and slapped it into ojoy.ai. And it is indeed a shameless plug for my own software. And said, hey, read this and find all the cool stuff and help me organize it so I can present it in a way that's cool. And it did. And found the most compelling parts of, good God, I think I gave it like 10 studies or something, found all the stuff that was the most interesting. And then I said, okay, help me compile all of this stuff and present it in a way that keeps people interested. And it did. And it used the but therefore framework. So the but therefore framework works like this. Stories work, but it's kind of intimidating to like tell stories about yourself, especially if you don't have one. Therefore, maybe you don't want to write any stories. But the good news is, turns out you don't have to tell stories about yourself at all. Therefore, you can tell stories. Obviously, I'm really playing up the whole but therefore thing, but I just told Ojoy to help me outline what I'm telling you right now with that kind of structure based on all of the factual data that I used AI to pull the research from. And I'm making this for you by referring to an outline they gave me. Now, of course, you could write a script or whatever. I'm just not good with scripts, so I would just much rather look at the outline over there on that monitor and then cut out the 8 million parts where I messed it up so it kind of looks like I know what I'm doing. But pretty simple. Don't use AI to replace yourself and come up with a bunch of BS. Just use it as an unbelievably efficient and intelligent partner, and that will get you very, very far. Hope you found this helpful, and try some stories. Don't tell stories about yourself. Just do research and find cool stuff that supports whatever it is you're trying to sell. In my case, you can use AI to tell stories. Here's why stories work. Do the same thing, and then use a tool like Ojoy to say, all right, take all this stuff and organize it so I can use it, find the coolest parts, and let's present those first, and then help me use a cool framework to keep people interested in. Not really that hard. Pretty cool, and people enjoy it. I think you get it. So anyway, thanks for paying attention, and take it easy.